Hello, everyone. Well, the holidays are coming up, and we always have this news that people get more anxious and they get burnout and depressed. So that's why we wanted to bring this topic on how breathwork and pranayama can be helpful for managing anxiety and burnout with Rebekka. Rebekka is one of the leading yoga and meditation coach, joining me live from San Diego. Namaste, Rebekka.
Namaste. Hello.
So let's just understand the anxiety and burnout, right? Burnout is like the after the anxiety. Just explain us the stages of what happens here.
Well, I think for most people, they know these words and they know these feelings, and especially in the last couple of years, it's been very common to hear anxiety and then burnout. And I think it can really depends on the person, but without an awareness around what anxiety is, I think people can live with it. And then burnout comes in, and burnout it's basically unmanaged stress for a duration of time. And so someone might be listening to this and think, well, yes, I've been under stress, and it could be work related. It could be all of life related. It could be family, personal. But at some point, if there's unmanaged stress that goes and goes and goes, then they might start feeling anxious, the red flags might start showing up even more after living through burnout. They might start feeling that chronic fatigue that can kick in. They might start feeling all sorts of other physical symptoms that can come in. And so they're in a way very closely related. And on the flip side, some folks might know anxiety and know that they're living with that kind of rapid mind, rapid body feeling and not remedying it. And therefore living with anxiety can also contribute to the burnout. So I think that it can happen in either way. It all depends on the person's awareness, but ultimately knowing that they could probably go hand in hand. It's probably safe to say that folks experiencing burnout are experiencing some level of anxiety, and vice versa. If anxiety is left untreated, or if folks are unaware, then that burnout will keep going. And at some point, that depletion really can just take over your whole mind, body, spirit, the whole being.
Okay, so let's just understand the breath work, pranayama and yoga asanas together. How can they help with both burnout and anxiety? What should we do?
Yeah. So the other piece with burnout and anxiety, it's nervous system based. So when someone is feeling the anxiousness, the rapid breathing or chest breathing, or I know I've experienced panic attack anxiety before, and there is this tightening. And in the moment, it might feel like it's the last thing you can do is take a breath. And at the same time, this is where mindfulness practices, or at least having a little light of awareness over here. Okay, this is what's happening to me right now. I'm feeling chronic fatigue. I'm feeling anxious. And then starting to notice the breath. So when the nervous system is in that state of fight or flight, the rapid breathing is what is happening. But in order to get out of that, there has to be a shift. And a lot of times, first, it's just a pause and a moment of this is happening, and then having the tools to go in. So if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling shortness of breath, taking a deep breath isn't readily available in the nervous system because it's trying to keep you safe and alive. However, when you can pause and start to just notice, be more mindful of the breath, my findings have been that you can slowly start to shift the breath into a little lower state. And the goal is, if there were to be a goal, to get the breath more into the diaphragm, more into the abdomen, belly region. And it might not happen right away, but if you can slowly start to feel the space in between the breaths and start to gradually let the breath go a little bit more into the belly, that's when we can start to feel a shift in the nervous system. So then hopefully at some point that fight or flight mode is going to begin to shift more into the parasympathetic. So fight or flight is sympathetic, parasympathetic is more of a relaxed state. And in that relaxed state, that's when we can take the exhales. You might even feel that in a moment where you're not even meaning to do it. But as you start to shift into relaxation mode out of fight or flight, the body will naturally take an exhale. And when those exhales happen, even more specifically, that's going to start to target the vagus nerve, which is that primary nerve for the relaxation response in the body. So simply put, when we're anxious or burnout, we're living in fight or flight. And when we can start to use breath work, pranayama practices, yoga postures, different elements of yoga, really most of those practices are meant to shift you into this relaxation mode. So if you currently have a yoga practice, even thinking of what postures make you feel more calm and using those as go-tos. Or pranayama broken down is definitely breath work, but it is this exchange of energy. So you can also think of it in an energetic lens. So we have, or so they say, 72,000 nadis, or if folks are familiar with acupuncture, these are like the meridians. So also in that state of fight or flight, the body is just buzzing with activity. So by using any pranayama or yoga practices, we can start to go into 72,000 channels of energy in the body and start to either calm or clear or utilize these practices like the breath work and the yoga to help open up what might feel restricted or what might be like literally just frozen in fear. And we can start to soften and release. And the more we can do that, then we'll gradually feel the opposite of all those things in terms of the anxiousness.
Okay, so which particular type of pranayama, if you could name a few postures and pranayama that we could, simple things that we could follow along?
Yeah, so the first most basic that I typically suggest is the belly breath, is to start to play with and explore, how are you breathing right now? And as you're watching this, you might even notice, how are you breathing right now? And for most folks, it's a chest breath throughout the day, unless you are fully trained and used to breathing lower in the belly. So step number one, or breath style number one, is the dirga breath, the dirga pranayama, which addresses that lower feeling. And you're not breathing air into your belly, but you are breathing low enough in your lungs that you're feeling some movement around your belly. So you can place a palm on the belly around your navel. You could place a palm on the heart. And for a few breaths, noticing where is the breath right now. And if it's mostly up in the chest, taking your time to bring it a little lower in the belly. And it'll take practice for folks who are not used to breathing this way. And if you've ever watched a child breathe, usually they are more belly focused. Babies breathe in the belly, but at some point through our life, as we evolve, it's just become this thing, especially in Western cultures, to cut off the belly, to cut off the breath from being felt. So, no wonder that we're living in a state of extra anxiousness and burnout and chronic fatigue, because just our breathing styles have shifted from supportive practices. So that dirga breath is number one. And then in terms of calming the vagus nerve or addressing that, like I mentioned, a sigh can get you there too. So breathing in, getting into the belly, taking up as much space as you can in the lungs, and just a sigh can start to bring attention to the back of the throat. And to take that into one step further, a different breath style of the ujjayi, sealing the lips, breathing in through the nose, sighing, but closing the lips, will also give that sense of vibration and opening. And that stimulation of the vagus nerve is going to help. After a few deep breaths, you should feel a shift. So taking the time to establish the belly breath, and then also exploring sealing the lips. If that sometimes if someone is dealing with anxiety, closing the lips can bring on an even heightened sense of anxiety. So the thing I do want to make sure I mention is that some breath styles are meant to almost invoke a sense of anxiety. For folks that do not have anxiety, that's okay. But for someone who does deal with anxious feelings, just be aware of the breath styles. And because there's so much breath work out there right now. So anything that is like a hyperventilating breath or even closing the lips might bring on some triggers. So just really approach it slowly. I think just pausing and noticing the breath, and then letting it be more in the belly. If you can get it there, that's a great place to start.
And what about the postures that go along with the belly breathing and the ujjayi pranayama that you would recommend?
So the process in terms of, just starting to take 3 deep breaths at a time, breathing in, filling the belly, holding for a moment if available, and slowly exhaling. So studies have shown that in just 3 deep breaths, which would be about 30 seconds, you can shift out of that fight or flight mode in the nervous system. So say the whole body is buzzing, 30 seconds, 3 deep breaths. So starting there, that can be a great process, a great practice. And also through all of this, you are cultivating mindfulness, and mindfulness can be branched into so many different arenas, but ultimately mindfulness is taking life moment by moment versus letting that anxious mind jump ahead, or we might have depression or fear that's a lot of times rooted in the past that's unresolved, or the future, the unknown future. So by being more mindful, literally practicing presence, which can be challenging if you're used to being in those two other opposites, can also invite the system to regulate. And when we're in the present moment, it's highly likely that you will be able to release from fight or flight, because in this exact moment, unless you're not, you are safe and you don't need to be in fight or flight or freeze. And a lot of times those responses are coming from past actions, wiring in the nervous system and whatnot. So just starting with those 3 deep breaths, one might be enough. I suggest taking a few, and then just noticing, and just the power of pause, the power of just taking a time out and just letting yourself become aware of what's going on in the body and the mind.
All right, well, we just wanted to bring a quick 10-minute session today, taking baby steps to avoid that you get burnout or help with managing the anxiety for the holidays and also beyond. Anything else you'd like to add, Rebekka, before we wrap up this quick session?
I think that's about it. I did read a quote the other day that an anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. It was Dr. Edmondson. So an anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. So still just really understanding and taking care of the physical body, because they are so connected, but also realizing, how can you relax the body? Take a bath, take a walk, take a nap, like all things like that definitely will help that anxious mind as well.
That's right. And mind, body, and soul are all connected. So it's not just the physical body is different from the mind. And that's what we are propagating, the holistic medicine, every single day for 10 minutes. Thank you so much for your support. Bye-bye now.